Welcome guys, welcome back to Minko's Corner. I hope you're gonna enjoy this video. I've had a lot of people watching my last video, so thank you guys. This video is gonna be about the Suez Canal, part 1 of 2. Again, Epic History TV. Um, now, uh, just for people who haven't watched the past video, I'm gonna do a little bit of a synopsis on what's been happening. Basically, I lost my YouTube channel and I'm starting back again. And I did a little bit of a series on Alexander the Great. I did part 1 to 3. I didn't do part 4, and unfortunately, I don't think I'm gonna redo it because it's gonna be really phony. I don't want to just react to a video I've watched. Now, I will be reacting to videos that I've seen in the past, but I will say to you guys that I've already seen this content. This I haven't seen. The Suez Crisis, part 1 of 2. This I haven't seen. I know it's happened, I think, in 1950, 60, in the 50s and 60s, where there was a crisis in the canal where the company that was operating the canal ended up sort of losing control. Anyways, I don't know that much about it, but it's very interesting and I want to learn more about it. So, let's watch it.
In 1956, a dispute over the Suez Canal in Egypt led to international crisis and war. Two fading colonial powers, Britain and France, expected an easy victory over Egypt, but were forced into a humiliating withdrawal as the world's new superpowers flexed their muscles. It was a stark sign that the age of European imperialism was over, and that a new international order had taken its place.
Yeah.
Little remembered today, the events of 1956 had huge consequences for Britain and France, the Arab world, Israel, and the United States of America. This is the story of the Suez Crisis, whose fallout shaped world affairs for decades to come.
Suez Crisis. A ditch through the desert. Let's see what happens. The spinal cord of the British Empire. Bismarck, man, has a way with words. And
In
it's so true as well.
1869, world navigation was transformed by the opening of the Suez Canal. This 100-mile man-made waterway through the Egyptian desert cut 5,000 miles off the voyage from Europe to Asia, as ships no longer had to sail around Africa. Its
to this day,
construction,
the Suez Canal is
overseen
so
by
important.
French diplomat Ferdinand de Lesseps, had taken 10 years and cost the lives of many thousands of Egyptian labourers. The Suez Canal Company, which owned and ran the canal, was a private company owned by its shareholders, including French, Austrian and Russian investors, as well as the ruler or Khedive of Egypt, Ismail Pasha. In 1875, to pay off his mountainous debts, the Khedive sold his 44% share in the canal company to the British government.
44%?
As the world's greatest imperial and naval power, Britain had initially opposed the canal, seeing it as a potential threat,
Yeah,
but soon proved to be its greatest beneficiary.
of course.
80% of the ships that used the canal were British, and it became a vital link to the British Empire's eastern colonies, and the jewel in the crown, India. Control of the canal and the security of Egypt became a vital British strategic concern. In 1882, when Egyptian anger at European interference in their country exploded into a nationalist revolt, led by Colonel Ahmad Urabi, the British sent a military force to intervene. The Egyptian army was swept aside, and Egypt effectively became a British protectorate for the next 60 years.
I know about that.
British control of the Suez Canal was a major strategic advantage in both world wars. But in the wake of victory in World War II, the British Empire was in retreat. India,
This is just me. It's just so out of. This doesn't pertain to the video at all, and it's weird. But it would have been way better, my personal opinion, if he ruled the Soviet Union all across the country, not just in Europe. If he just ruled Soviet Union for all the, I don't know, just me. That's just.
Pakistan and Burma gained their independence. There were revolts against British rule in Malaya, Kenya and Cyprus. Egypt had received formal independence in 1922. But Britain continued to station troops there and govern much of the country's affairs.
The Suez Canal was
Only
theirs.
in
They didn't give it up.
1947 did British troops withdraw to the so-called Canal Zone, under an earlier deal with Egypt's King Farouk, that the British could keep bases there until 1956.
Until the 1956. Okay. So.
But Egyptians were turning against Farouk. They blamed him for failing to prevent the creation of the Jewish state of Israel, and for Egypt's defeat in the Arab-Israeli war that had followed.
How the fuck did Israel
They
win that
also
war?
blamed King Farouk for
A little intermittence here, but I don't know if you've looked at it, but the war against 1948-1949 war, it was basically Israel against all Arab nations. I may be mistaken. I don't think I am. I think because there was another war in '68, but they were alone against everybody and they won. Like, how the hell did that happen?
allowing British troops to remain in Egypt. In the Canal Zone, British soldiers and civilians came under attack from the increasingly hostile local population, with riots, arson and gun battles, leading the British to impose martial law. By 1952, a group of nationalist Egyptian army officers, known as the Free Officers Movement, had had enough. They seized power in a military coup. King Farouk was forced to abdicate and went to live out a luxurious exile in Italy.
Hey, not so bad.
The following year, Egypt was declared a republic.
That always goes well. Always. The coup.
Colonel Gamal Abdel Nasser emerged as the new leader and president of Egypt. A committed and charismatic Arab nationalist, determined to free Egypt from foreign influence.
I mean, it's smart. Basically, what he...
In the 1950s, America and the West were engaged in a standoff with the Soviet Union, known as the Cold War.
Shouldn't the Cold War start in 1945? I don't know. I'm sorry I'm pausing, guys. Sorry.
A so-called Iron Curtain divided Europe between communist East and capitalist West. Around the world, each side tried to win friends and limit the other's influence. Egypt, the largest and most powerful Arab state, would be a valuable prize for either side. But which way would President Nasser turn? US President Dwight D. Eisenhower wanted to win over Nasser, but couldn't grant his request for a major arms deal. They'd most likely be used against Israel, which had many supporters in the US. The US and Britain instead offered to fund construction of the Aswan Dam, the centerpiece of Nasser's plan to modernize.
Speaking of dams, now it's Egypt that's getting dammed out because Ethiopia is basically, I don't know if you've heard about this, I don't know why I'm bringing it up, because of the dam. Ethiopia is basically damming the Nile, and they're gonna stop the water going to Egypt by, I think, 80%. I think something similar. I may be completely wrong, but I know it was. I think they're already at war. It's Ethiopia and South Sudan against Egypt. I don't know why I brought it up.
Is the Egyptian economy. Britain also agreed to remove its troops from the Suez Canal zone by June 1956.
What happened? They didn't
But
move?
then, border tension between Israel and her neighbours boiled over as the Israeli army attacked Egyptian-controlled Gaza, killing 38 Egyptian soldiers. The Gaza raid made Nasser determined to rapidly strengthen and modernise Egypt's army. Since the US wouldn't help, Nasser turned to the Soviet bloc and signed a major deal to purchase modern tanks and aircraft from communist Czechoslovakia. The deal was seen as a huge triumph across the Arab world. Nasser further antagonized America by establishing diplomatic relations with communist China. For Eisenhower, chasing an alliance with Nasser was proving a major headache, and the US and British offer to fund the Aswan Dam was withdrawn. It was a move that would prove to have serious global repercussions that neither Britain nor America ever saw coming. On the 26th of July, 1956, Nasser stunned the world by announcing that with immediate effect, Egypt would nationalize the Suez Canal Company.
Alright, I get it.
We dug the canal with our lives, our skulls, our bones, our
You know
blood.
what I love about this? I'm gonna just want to say my two cents here. I love that, especially this part in history, is not black and white, because I can see it from both point of views. I can see it from the Egyptians, which is like, it's our canal, it's on our land. We dug it. People, thousands of Egyptians died. It's ours. But then I can see it on the British side, like, we bailed out the King Farouk. We bought his shares. We built it with our capital. It's ours. So I can see both sides. It's not like one side's evil, one side's good. It's not. It's much more interesting that way. Just my personal opinion, because it's not like I can see both sides. Truly, like, listen, it's very sympathetic. Like, the Egyptian side is very sympathetic. Like, we died for it and everything. But then my most pragmatic side can see, well, I paid for it. So
He
it's
declared.
interesting. It's very interesting.
The money is ours, and the Suez Canal belongs to us. We shall build the Aswan Dam our own way. If Britain and America would not fund the dam, Nasser intended to fund it himself with profits from the Suez Canal Company. His speech received an ecstatic response from the people of Egypt. Nasser's move was entirely legal. The company's shareholders would be bought out at fair prices. Yet his decision would trigger an international crisis, war, and a new era in the balance of world power. In Britain, Prime Minister Sir Anthony Eden responded with fury to what he saw as a major attack on British national interests. 15,000 ships a year came through the Suez Canal, and from the Middle East they brought a vital resource that the British economy couldn't survive without.
Through it travels today about half the oil without which the industry of this country, of Western Europe, of Scandinavia, and of many other countries too, couldn't keep going. This is a matter of life and death to us all.
Nasser, as Eden put it, had his thumb on our windpipe. As Britain's Foreign Secretary in the 1930s and World War II, Eden had made his reputation by opposing appeasement, the policy of trying to maintain peace by giving in to the demands of dictators. But
That worked
now,
out well.
with poor health and frayed nerves clouding his judgment, he convinced himself that Nasser was another Hitler or Mussolini, an Arab dictator that Britain had to face down.
Of course.
The Egyptian president, he
It
decided,
makes so much sense.
would have to go. French Prime Minister Guy Mollet agreed with Eaton's assessment. He had an additional reason to want Nasser gone. France was fighting a bitter war in its African colony of Algeria against nationalist rebels, trained and supplied by Nasser.
It's so interesting.
Britain and
man.
France now secretly began planning a military operation to seize control of the Suez Canal, remove Nasser from power, and reaffirm their status as major global powers. That summer, under pressure from the Americans, Eden agreed to host an international conference in a last effort to find a peaceful solution to the crisis.
The oldie movies.
Lancaster House, London, naturally attracted quite a crowd on the opening day of the Suez Conference. 22 nations were represented. Only 2 countries, Egypt and Greece, had declined the invitation to the fateful meeting.
18 of the 22 nations supported Britain and France's position that the Suez Canal be returned to international ownership. A proposal turned down flat by President Nasser. US Secretary of State John Foster Dulles told the British that nevertheless, America would not support an attack on Egypt. Dulles strongly believed that military action against Nasser would push the entire Arab world into the arms of the Soviets. Besides, President Eisenhower was running for re-election and would not welcome the distraction. It was a warning that Eden fatefully ignored. Britain and France had already chosen the path to war.
What the fuck did they lose? Jeez.
Join the
So, great video. We learned a lot. We didn't really get into it. We sort of got the foundation. It's very interesting. But yeah, how the fuck did they lose? France and Britain against fucking Egypt, and Egypt won? What the hell? That's interesting. I want to know more about it. I'm gonna finish this series. Don't worry, guys. I'm gonna post the video, the second video tomorrow. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I did. Now, what are my thoughts on this? My thoughts. This is very interesting. This is really interesting because, to be honest, it's so how should I put this? Not so much underrated, but to be honest, I don't know. I don't have all the facts. What he said, that if America joined the war, they were afraid that all the other Arab nations are gonna switch to the Soviet. Would that have happened? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe the Egyptians would have, but all the others, I doubt. I don't know. I don't know how they lost though. I mean, I get it. You're far away from your country, but you're not that far away. You're France and you're Britain. In what year did India get liberated or freed? I think they're already free by now. I think it was 1952. I'm not sure. But if they still had India and they lost the war, like how the hell did that happen? Like the Soviets, did they help? I mean, they sold them weapons, so they have that going for them. But I don't know. We're gonna see a second video tomorrow. I hope you liked it as much as I did, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. See ya.